Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun
Mancha Kalpa Trubhyashta Kripasindubheva Japatitanam Pavaneva Vaishnaveva Vano Namaha. Welcome back to Bhakti Shastri course online. In our last lesson, lesson 6, we concluded our study of the third chapter, and we were discussing how practice of Krishna consciousness is transcendental to Varnashram Dharma, why Krishna follows the Varnashram Dharma. We were discussing following Varnashram Dharma and how it supports the practice of individual sadhakas within ISKCON, and how ISKCON, by demonstrating aspects of Varnashram Dharma, can set an example to humanity at large in regard to the appropriate way to live in this world. And we were discussing Krishna's response to Arjuna's fourth reason for not fighting, about destruction of the dynasty, and how by withdrawing from the battle, that will contribute to the breakdown of the Varnashram system. And in that way, Krishna completely turned around Arjuna's argument. And we concluded our lesson with Krishna's analysis of lust, some of the important principles. Rajaguna Samudbhava is produced from the mode of passion. It is Abritam Jnanam, it covers one's knowledge. Jnana Vijnana Nashanam, it destroys knowledge and self-realization. And Indrayani Ado Niyam, in the beginning, Krishna recommends by regulating the senses, practicing Krishna consciousness, we can curb the great, all-devouring enemy of Nitya-varina, the eternal enemy of lust. Let's begin the fourth chapter of Bhagavad Gita as it is, translations and purports by ISKCON's founder, Acharya A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Bhagavanu Vacha Imam Vivashvate Jogam Proktavam Aham Avyayam Vivashan Manave Prahu Manu Ikshvakave Bravit. The personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivashan, and Vivashan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed Ikshvaku. In his purport, Srila Prabhupada analyzes the respective periods of time when the Gita was spoken. Prabhupada's calculating that the current Manu duration of life is 300 million years. And for at least 120 million years ago, Krishna instructed Vivashvan. At least 2 million years ago, Vivashvan instructed Manu, and Manu instructed Ikshvaku. And in this way, Imam Raja Shayo Vidu, the second verse is explaining that Imam Raja Shayo Vidu. So the Rajarshis, that in this way the Parampara disciplic succession was actually carried on by the kings and the great rulers of the planet. So text number 2, Krishna is explaining that Evam Paramparam Praptam, in this way, through the Parampara system, one can receive the science of yoga. Imam Raja Shayo Vidu, it was understood by the kings in that way. Sa kalena ha mahata joganashta parantapa. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science, as it is, appears to be lost. Prabhupada is commenting in his lectures on this verse. The time is very powerful. It changes. It kills the original position. You have got experience. You purchase anything. It is very fresh, new, but time will kill it. It will become shabby. It will be useless at a time, in due course of time. The material time is called Kala. This Kala is also another form of Krishna. So Kalena Mahata. Therefore it is called Mahata. It is very powerful. It is not an ordinary thing, Mahata. Its business is to destroy. Currently, in ISKCON, we are experiencing the good fortune of having with us, amongst us, and available to associate with so many devotees who were personally trained by Srila Prabhupada, initiated by Srila Prabhupada, and personally trained by Srila Prabhupada. And we can see that leadership in this movement is to a major degree related to the training, the personal training that Srila Prabhupada gave devotees. And those devotees who Prabhupada personally trained, we can see are serving in key leadership positions in ISKCON. This is the year 2018, and within perhaps 10 or 20 years, unfortunately, we won't have any more those who are personally trained by Srila Prabhupada, his disciples, with us on the planet. In some ways, you could say that we are very much enjoying the euphoria of Prabhupada's visit to this planet and his initiating disciples and training them up. And still the impact of that is very much felt in ISKCON, because so many of Prabhupada's leading disciples who he trained are personally present. Now, in the future, the importance of studying Srila Prabhupada's books will become emphasized more and more in ISKCON, because we won't have any devotees who are personally trained by Srila Prabhupada, and decisions of the direction that we move and the leadership of this movement, that will come from the understanding of Prabhupada's legacy as he's given in his books. And leadership in ISKCON, a major qualification will be the depth with which the devotee understands Srila Prabhupada's books. And in this way, we can, even though as the period of time between Prabhupada's Prakat Leelas, when he was present on this planet, to the present, as that period of time increases, then Sakalena Hamata, naturally that's going to affect the mission of Prabhupada and the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. And that effect can be reduced that much, which we're able to focus on Prabhupada's legacy and his mission through deep study of his books and imparting education and training to every member of the society in Srila Prabhupada's books. Then that effective time, as Prabhupada says, it destroys everything, that can be minimized and reduced by us training the devotees very systematically in the teachings of Srila Prabhupada. And in that way, his legacy can carry on and the effective time can be minimized. And the ISKCON that Srila Prabhupada created and established for spreading Krishna consciousness all over the world can maintain for many, many generations, and Prabhupada even mentioned for thousands of years, for 10,000s of years. However, that will only happen if the devotees very conscientiously align themselves with the teachings and the mission of Srila Prabhupada. And that will be possible to the extent with which we deeply study and understand his teachings as he's revealed them in his literatures. As Prabhupada's commenting in the purport himself to text number 2. 5,000 years ago it was detected by the Lord himself that the disciplic succession was broken, and therefore he declared that the purpose of the Gita appeared to be lost. In the same way, at the present moment also, there are so many editions of the Gita, but almost all of them are not according to the authorized disciplic succession. Since there is a great need of an edition of the Gita in English, as it is received by the Parampara disciplic succession system, an attempt is made herewith to fulfill this great want. Bhagavad Gita, accepted as it is a great boon to humanity. Srila Prabhupada Ki. After explaining the history of the Gita and how it has been imparted in human society, Arjuna asks the question, because Krishna is explaining that I instructed the sun god at the time of the creation, Imam Vivashvatam Yogam Praktavam Mahamabhyam. So Arjuna asks quite a relevant question in text number 4, that the sun god Vivashvan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him? On the basis of this question, Krishna, in the subsequent 4 verses, explains the transcendental nature of his appearance in this world. And a very important section of verses and very frequently quoted by Srila Prabhupada. Krishna is responding to Arjuna's question in text 5 that Bahuni me vetitani janamani tavacharjana tani aham veda saravani na tvam veta parantapa. Many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. So in this verse, Krishna is indicating the specific distinction between himself as the Supreme Personality of Godhead and living entities in general. So Krishna is explaining that Bahuni me bhatitani janmani, that so many births both you and I have had. Tani aham veda sarvani, that I can remember all of them. Veda sarvani, I remember all of them. Na tvam veta parantapa, but na tvam veta, where you are unable to remember your previous births. And Prabhupada's commenting in the purport that the living entity forgets everything due to his change of body, but the Lord remembers because he does not change his Satchit Ananda body. Sometimes people argue that, if I had previous lives, naturally I would remember them. But from my own experience, now I'm past 50 years old, and if I reflect on what happened to me between my birth and the age of 10 years, I can only remember one incident in that whole 10-year period. And that's just a vague memory of something that happened when I was 4 years old on my birthday. I remember I got a Batman suit, and just a vague memory. But years and years are completely wiped out of my memory. I don't remember anything. Of course, we could look at pictures and generate things, but we forget, and those things that we've forgotten, we don't even know we've forgotten them. They're just completely disappeared from our memory. So this is the propensity of the living entity. We forget things, and when they're once forgotten, that's it. There's no recollection of those things whatsoever. And as we'll be discussing in the 15th chapter of the Gita, there's a reason why we forget previous lives. As Krishna himself explains, Savasya chaham riti shanivishtam mritashmriti jnanam apohanam cha. From me, mritashmriti comes remembrance, jnanam, knowledge, and apohanam, forgetfulness. So in order to facilitate the living entity in his objective to enjoy in this world as an imitator, the Purusha Bhav, Dehi Shmin Purusha, the Para, we're imitating the Supreme Personality of Godhead, assuming the Purusha Bhav, that I am the enjoyer. And therefore we come to this world, we get a certain set of senses, and we try to enjoy. And actually we require to forget our position of subordination to the Lord, and even our efforts to enjoy in previous lives. If we were constantly reminded of that, it would be very traumatic. Who would be interested in getting married if you remembered all of your previous marriages? So we forget these things so that we can have a fresh start, and actually we can again invest our hope that yes, I can enjoy in this world. And in that way we forget all of our previous failures, and again we carry on with our efforts to try to enjoy in this world. And this is the nature of conditional existence. So Krishna's explaining, Prabhupada's explaining here that when Krishna appears, his appearance is unlike our appearance. Ajo api shan abhyayatma. He's appearing, it appears that he takes his birth. However, he's appearing in his original transcendental form, and he doesn't change bodies the way we do. In that way, there's no question of forgetting. Prabhupada's lecturing on this verse in 1969 in Los Angeles. How can God forget? If you forget, then you are not God immediately. There is no other argument. God cannot forget. God remembers always. The Mayavadi philosopher says, I am God, now I am under illusion of Maya. I've forgotten myself that I am God. And by meditation I shall become God. This is all nonsense. God cannot forget himself, then he is not God. So this is the distinction between the living entity and the Supreme Lord, that God never forgets. There is no potency which can cover the Lord, which can influence him and induce him to forget, because he's the supreme controller. And therefore he remembers everything, and that's why he's God. And that's his unique qualification. And all other living entities, although we are living beings, we don't have that power, we don't remember everything, and because we're not God. Even in the case of Arjuna, it's very interesting, as Prabhupada's commenting in the purport. The difference between the Lord and Arjuna is that the Lord remembered the incident, whereas Arjuna could not remember. This is the difference between the part and parcel living entity and the Supreme Lord. Although Arjuna is addressed as mighty hero, Parantapa, Natram Veta Parantapa. Even though Parantapa means that the subduer of the enemy is so powerful, but even such an exalted person like Arjuna, still he will not have this capacity to remember everything, and he forgets. And Prabhupada is explaining that the living entity, however great he may be in the material estimation, can never be equal to the Supreme Lord. And even in the case of Arjuna, he's what's described as the Nitya Parshad, which means an eternal associate of the Lord, as we'll see in the previous verse, text number 3. Bhaktoshi me shakacheti rahasyam hi etat uttamam. Because you are my devotee and my friend. So an eternal associate of the Lord that appears along with the Lord in his various incarnations, just like when Sri Krishna again appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, then Arjuna was also present as Sri Ramananda Roy. So he's an exalted living entity, not an ordinary living entity, a liberated soul, eternally liberated soul. However, such eternally liberated souls are still not equal to God. These subsequent verses are very, very instructive on the nature of the Lord's appearance. We can read some of these verses. Although I am unborn, ajopishan abhyayatma bhutanamishwaropisam prakritim shamadishtaya sambhavami atmamaya. My transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Sambhavami atmamayaya. The atmamayaya, it's unlike the living entities, we appear out of the mahamaya, out of the illusion. And having concluded one life, still there's so much a repository of desire, and therefore we're attracted to the womb of another mother. We're given a body, and out of illusion we identify with this material body. And our whole birth is based upon our illusion. Our taking birth is the result, is the consequences of our illusion that we are matter. So Krishna's appearance, Sambhavami, I do incarnate. Atmamayaya, Atmamaya is my own energy. It's by my own will. Yada yada, wherever and wherever. He dharmasha, glanira bhavati bharata. Adbhutanam adharmasha, tadatmanam srijami aham. These text 7 and text 8, probably the most well-known verses of the Bhagavad Gita. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice or descendant of Bharat and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself. Prabhupada's commenting here that there are many incarnations of God, and he's appearing when there is discrepancies in the practice of religion. Dharmasha glanir means that there is decline in religious practice. Bhavati bharata adbhutanam, adharma, and rise in irreligion. And the Lord can appear. Prabhupada in the subsequent purport, he describes the different types of avatars. Purushat avatar, guna avatar, lila avatar, shakjavesh avatar. In this way, the Lord can appear in different ways, different forms. And Prabhupada's commenting toward the end of the purport that we can see that there's some distinction between the different occasions that the Lord appears. Prabhupada's explaining that 2 plus 2 equals 4. It's a mathematical principle that is true in beginner's arithmetic class and in advanced class as well. Okay, so when you're learning maths, I remember when we were learning maths, when I first began learning maths at school, I can still remember our curriculum designers and teachers were brilliant geniuses, and they used a kinesthetic, actually using color, shape, and kinesthetic learning. We had little blocks. Like I remember 3 was a yellow block, 4 was a blue block, a little bit bigger. Green, that was 7, that was a little bit bigger. And just 1 to 10, I remember, I think 1 was black. And in this way, we got the concept of volume and of amount. That 2 is twice as big as 1. And 4 is 4 times as big as 1, twice as big as 2. In this way, these basic fundamental concepts of maths and arithmetic were indoctrinated into us in a very ingenious manner. So we're learning maths. Now, those same principles are there when you go to applied mathematics, masters and doctorates in the higher levels of education. The same principles are there. In fact, it's an interesting example that Prabhupada gives when the devotees were asking Prabhupada, how is it that you're able, Srila Prabhupada, you're able to sit and discuss with the scientists and politicians and state leaders and you're able to, you're so expert in everything and you're able to even defeat them in their own fields. How is it that you're expert in every field, Srila Prabhupada? And Prabhupada gave the example as, if you understand the concept of 0 to 9, you understand what is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. If you understand those concepts, then you can understand everything about mathematics and arithmetic. Because it's nothing more than these numbers in different combinations and different arrangements, 0 to 9. There's nothing else in all of the advanced science of mathematics. It's 0 to 9 in different combinations. So Prabhupada was explaining how because I know Krishna, then in that way is nothing more than Krishna everywhere, and in that way we can discuss on every subject in an authoritative way and defeat the arguments. Because if you know Krishna, you know everything. So if you know 0 to 9, then you know everything about maths. However, just when we were learning the little blocks, and 2 and 4 and 7, we know the fundamental concepts, but you can't compare the level of learning and the detail and the nuances and the depth of understanding with the preparatory school child to the advanced master's degree student or the doctorate degree of mathematics, although the principles are the same. So Prabhupada's explaining that in all incarnations of the Lord, the same principles are taught, but they appear to be higher and lower in varied circumstances. So it is ill-informed if we try to make a conclusion that all theological understandings are equal. Well, in principle, yes, because approaching God, and the essence is the same. But the details and the sciences are not the same, and there are more advanced teachings. And Prabhupada's commenting that the higher principles of religion begin with the acceptance of the 4 orders and the 4 statuses of social life. We were mentioning in a previous lesson how I was discussing once with a Christian missionary in Bangladesh how in the very beginning in Bhagavad Gita mentioning swadharma, swakarma, how considering the different natures of people, there's different approaches and different standards expected, which constitute morality and religion. And that's just in the very beginning of Bhagavad Gita. As Prabhupada's mentioning, this is an advanced level, which you won't find in so many of the other theological sampradayas that we have on this planet, this understanding. And even we'll see as we move through Bhagavad Gita that when we reach the 18th chapter, then Krishna actually goes beyond this level of the dharma, varnashram dharma, and the swadharma. And sarvadharma and purijag. You don't worry about all of these other temporary designations and the temporary dharmas. And the highest dharma, mameka sharana, you just surrender unto me in love. Manmana bhavamad bhakta. This is the param dharma, as Bhagavatam goes on to elaborate in more detail, the param dharma, the supreme occupation for all humanity. And that is very clearly explained in the teachings of Bhagavad Gita and in Srimad Bhagavatam. And in this way we can understand the various incarnations of the Lord and the respective importance of the teachings that the Lord imparts in these various incarnations. And understand that when Krishna personally appears, that's also very rare, as Prabhupada mentioned in previous purports, only once in the day of Lord Brahma is a very extraordinary circumstance. And subsequent to that, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appears in the same age. In the following yuga, Mahaprabhu appears in order to further establish the mission of Krishna by the Sankirtan movement. And in this way we can understand it. Those of us who have been fortunate to come in contact with the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by the grace of Srila Prabhupada are in a very fortunate position and have been provided with the ultimate teachings of God consciousness, the ultimate theological system. And Krishna is mentioning here that for imparting this system, he regularly appears in this world. Text number 8, Paritranaya sadunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma shangstarpanataya sambhavami juge juge. To deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. Now Prabhupada's mentioning in the purport that the vinashaya cha duskritam, actually the Lord doesn't personally require to destroy the demons because there's so many agents in the material energy that will do that. But he is generally responding to the prayers and the requests of the devotees and may personally vanquish demons under those circumstances. Prabhupada mentions Lord Ram defeating Ravan and Kamsa being defeated. All of these extraordinary circumstances, and that particularly the Lord is interested to paritranaya sadunam, to reciprocate and deliver the devotees, and in that case he'll personally kill the demons to do that. And Prabhupada further elaborates that Lord Sri Krishna descends for the specific purpose of mitigating the anxieties of the pure devotees who are very anxious to see him in his original Vrindavan pastime. When Krishna personally appears on this planet and he displays his exquisite pastimes in Vrindavan, it's interesting. Bhagavatam, it narrates Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, in Mathura, in Dwarka. And when Kunti Maharani is praying in the Bhagavatam in first canto, chapter 8, Queen Kunti's prayers, which are also very much appreciated by Srila Prabhupada and regularly quoted, and publications on Queen Kunti's prayers. So there's a prayer where Queen Kunti is explaining how she's bewildered by Jashodama in Vrindavan. She's bewildered. She cannot understand. Even though Kunti is the aunt of Krishna and is in an affectionate relationship of Vatsalya Ras, Aishwarya Jukta Vatsalya Ras, Aishwarya Jukta, because she also has the understanding that her nephew is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Govindaya Namo Namaha, she prays. So she's even bewildered by Jasoda's behavior when she takes the stick and she's chasing Krishna. So these Vrindavan pastimes are the most exalted pastimes of God. As Chakravarti Thakur explains Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission in 5 precepts, Aradha Bhagavan Brajesha Tanayos Tat Dhamma Vrindavanam. Of all of the forms of Godhead, Aradhya Bhagavan, the most worshipable, the ultimate form of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan is Sri Krishna. Aradha Bhagavan is Brajesha Tanaya. The Braja Ish means the king of Braj, that's Nanda Maharaj, and Tanaya means his child, his son. Brajesha Tanayo, the darling son of King Nanda Maharaj in Vrindavan. That is the ultimate, most worshipable form of the Lord. Tat Dhamma Vrindavanam, he resides in Vrindavan. Ramna Kachit Upasana Brajavadu Bhagana Jakalpita. And the Ramna Kachit Upasana, which worship is Ramna, is the most pleasing to Lord Krishna. Ramna Kachit Upasana, which is the most pleasing type of worship. Brajabadu Bhagana Jakalpita, that which is performed by the residents of Vrindavan, the cowherd damsels of Vrindavan, in their completely selfless love of Sri Krishna. And that rasa of the Gopi Bhav and the Braja Prema we can awaken by following the teachings of Rupa Goswami as given to us by Srila Prabhupada. And in that way, this most exalted, most extraordinary, most rare incarnation of Krishna in Vrindavan, we can understand and appreciate by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Also, it's interesting in this verse that Krishna is explaining Dharma Sangstapan. Now, stapan is to establish, and Sangstapan means to irrevocably establish, completely establish. Sangstapan artaya, Sangstarpan artaya. Sangstarpan artaya means for the purpose of irrevocably establishing. This is a very important statement in the Bhagavad Gita, because Prabhupada would on occasion refer to one unscrupulous mission that propagate the philosophy that any path to God is equally acceptable and equal. This is the philosophy Jotamot Totapat. Jotamot means as many ideas, as many you could say, mot means opinions. Jotamot Totapat, that many paths there are. It's interesting how the simple people are bewildered simply because of the poetical nature of these statements. It sounds real, it sounds pretty authoritative. Jotapat, totapat. This is the poetical aspect of it tends to assume that it's very authoritative. But it's not. It's poetical, but it's not authoritative. If it's authoritative, then what Krishna is saying here would become meaningless, because Krishna is mentioning that Dharma Sangstarpanartaya, for establishing the true religion and for rectifying the irreligion. Adbhutanam adharmasya, in the previous verse, when there's a rise of irreligion, misconception and misunderstanding, when that becomes predominant. Now, if Jotamat, if every path is equally acceptable, then there'd be no question of adharma or irreligiousness. Everything is equal. Whatever you decide, that can be. But Krishna is saying not everything is equal. And whenever there is a misunderstanding and the actual principles become compromised, then I regularly appear to rectify those misunderstandings. So it's foolish to think that everything is okay and whatever your conception, because Krishna himself personally appears to rectify misconceptions. So this very important verse of Bhagavad Gita refutes this modern philosophy which is unauthorized. Now these aspects of Krishna's birth and appearance are very important, And just by understanding this, we can perfect our lives, as Krishna mentions. You can do a statistical analysis, and I have heard devotees who have done a statistical analysis of Prabhupada's teachings. And the most frequently quoted verse, there are some verses we hear that 7th chapter, text 1, was the most frequent verse that from the Bhagavad Gita that Prabhupada spoke on, 7.1. And also you can see in the Bhagavatam, in the first canto, 2nd chapter, the set of verses there that Prabhupada gave more than 120 lectures on. That's from 126 to 1220. Savai Pungsha Paro Dharma, all those verses there. Very much Prabhupada regularly spoke on those verses. And similarly, statistics have shown that this verse, text 9 of chapter 4, is the most frequently quoted verse in Srila Prabhupada's teachings. Very important verse. Janma karma chame dibyam evam yoveti tat tataha chakvadeha puna janma naiti mameti so Arjuna. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So understanding the science which was imparted in the previous verses, how Krishna's Janma is Dibya, because he's appearing in his original transcendental body. And with a transcendental birth and a transcendental body, then naturally all of the activities of Krishna are also transcendental. Evam jo veti tattvataha, those who veti tattvataha, this truth, this Krishna consciousness, the science of Krishna, how he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Veti tattvataha, those who understand this, chakvadeha punarjanmanaiti, then they will not take birth again in this material world. At the end of this life, having given up this body, they can return to the spiritual world. Because understanding, of course, understanding the position of Krishna and our relationship with him would induce us to become his servant and to function as Krishna's servant. And in that way we can perfect our lives and go back to the spiritual world upon giving up this body, which is the purpose of life. Let's glance at the overview of chapter 4, verses 1 to 10, transcendental knowledge about Krishna as we have analyzed, about his transcendental birth and his transcendental activities and understanding those activities and his birth. Verses 11 to 15, Krishna as the goal of all paths and the creator of the Varnashram. Verses 16 to 24, Karma Yoga for a Jnani. Actually, these descriptions are describing the activities of a Jnani, and we will glance over those verses in a little more detail in a subsequent lesson when we're looking at the Yoga ladder. Verses 25 to 33, sacrifices resulting in knowledge. Many activities that Krishna recommends that one can follow to purify oneself, including pranayam and charity and other types of tapasya Krishna mentions. And verses 34 to 42, a summary of transcendental knowledge. Now in this section we find a very important verse which espouses the importance of accepting a spiritual master. Text 34, which we will read and discuss. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadikshanti te jnanam jnananashtatta darshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching the spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively. Render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. The tattvadarshi, those who have realized, they can impart the knowledge to you. Prabhupada's commenting that no one can become a bona fide spiritual master without following this principle of disciplic succession. No one can be spiritually realized by manufacturing his own process. One has to accept the spiritual master and be trained by the spiritual master. One has to learn the science of Krishna consciousness by asking questions. Pariprashnena. 3 items mentioned here. Pranipatena means paying obeisances. Nipat means falling down like a stick. And pariprashna means inquiring. So one has to be, Prabhupada's translating that one has to be submissive, submit oneself to the spiritual master, worship the spiritual master, bow down to the spiritual master. Not treat the spiritual master in a casual way. And pranipatena, pariprashnena, one has to inquire from the spiritual master how to progress in spiritual life. Similarly, we'll see in Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu when he's describing Choshati Sharananga, 64 items of performing sadhana bhakti, and beginning with 3 items that very much reflect principles we find in this verse of Bhagavad Gita. Guru Padasraya is the first principle. Take shelter of the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Diksha, accept initiation from the spiritual master. And Seva Guru Padasraya Diksha Guru Shebaya. These three items Prabhupada mentions are very, very important to accept shelter of the lotus feet of the spiritual master, accept initiation, and serve the spiritual master. Sat Dharma Pritcha, one should inquire about the eternal principles of Krishna consciousness, Sadhu Anugamana, and follow the footsteps of the previous acharyas. So these first 3, 4, 5 principles of the 64 items of sadhana bhakti very much reflect the principles mentioned in this verse by Krishna. Prabhupada's continuing in his purport that not by independent study of books of knowledge can one progress in spiritual life. So we shouldn't assume staying at home and reading Srila Prabhupada's books alone is sufficient for us to perfect our spiritual lives. Of course, by reading Srila Prabhupada's books, any situation, we're going to make tremendous spiritual advancement. But in addition to that, we also have to take association from other devotees. Different ways to associate. We can associate with peer devotees as equals, with friends, and we can associate with junior devotees by preaching Krishna consciousness, and we associate with senior devotees by taking shelter and inquiring from them. And this type of a devotional association is also essential. And simply by reading the books without associating with devotees will not be sufficient for our progress in spiritual life. One has to approach a bona fide spiritual master to receive the knowledge. Such a spiritual master should be accepted in full surrender, and one should serve the spiritual master like a menial servant without false prestige. The secret of advancement. And Prabhupada is giving some tips here from personal experience, and these are exquisite tips. That these are the secret of advancement is to satisfy. We see from the early days of the development of this movement that those fortunate souls who were able to associate with Srila Prabhupada and receive personal instructions from him how to spread this mission became so inspired and so enthused and so empowered to spread Krishna consciousness. And those devotees that accepted so much personal sacrifice and difficulty in order to go to foreign countries where there was no Krishna consciousness, no devotees, no temples, and begin the Krishna consciousness movement, Prabhupada was so much pleased with those devotees. So by their service, they were able to satisfy the spiritual master in such a tangible way that those devotees were blessed and they made so much spiritual advancement. This is the key. We have to satisfy it. We may not be directly ordered by Srila Prabhupada now because Prabhupada no longer with us in the physical form. Of course, there's direct instructions and general instructions in Prabhupada's books. But through the Parampara system, we're similarly accepting shelter of the current spiritual masters and being instructed by them how to serve Krishna. One has to pray for such an instruction. One has to seek out the advanced association and take shelter and induce the spiritual master to be kind and to give instructions that one can accept in one's heart. It's like Srila Prabhupada received the specific instruction from Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur to preach in English language, Gaudavani, all over the world. And Prabhupada made that order the mission of his life to show an example of what a disciple, what should be the appropriate attitude of the disciple. So one has to seek out a spiritual master who can give you an instruction like that you can dedicate your life to fulfilling. Such person is very fortunate, and it's very easy for that person to advance in spiritual life. There's the Guru Kripa, mercy of the spiritual master, that Krishna said, Toma Krishna Ditya Paro. He can give. It's not so easy to satisfy Krishna directly. And whether Krishna is satisfied or not, we may not get affirmation. But the living spiritual master, Guru Rupe Krishna Kripa Korena Bhaktagan, that is very easy for us to find out what Krishna wants by hearing from the spiritual master, and specifically for our unique circumstances. Prabhupada's instructions are very general for all the devotees, but our unique situation can be perceived by our spiritual guide, the spiritual master, and therefore the specific instructions the spiritual master gives to the individual disciple can be even more helpful in helping the disciple focus their mind and focus their life on serving the Lord and very rapidly make spiritual advancement. Prabhupada mentions one must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master when he sees. When he sees. There needs to be an interactive relationship with the spiritual master, and one needs to be accountable to the spiritual master. He can see your progress when he sees. Prabhupada meant when he sees the genuine desire of the disciple, he automatically blesses the disciple with genuine spiritual understanding. A very esoteric principles of the guru-shishya relationship that Prabhupada is revealing in this purport, and the importance of accepting a spiritual master. In the subsequent verses, in text 36, Prabhupada is commenting in a purport, in the ocean, however expert a swimmer one may be, the struggle for existence is very, very severe. If someone comes forward and lifts the struggling swimmer from the ocean, he is the greatest savior. In this way, one requires to be saved by the spiritual master who can personally facilitate delivering the disciple back home to Godhead. To conclude our study of the 4th chapter, Prabhupada's commenting, so we require hundreds and thousands of spiritual masters who have understood this science, this Krishna science, and preach all over the world. Therefore, we have formed this society, and we invite all sincere souls to take part in the society and become a spiritual master and preach this science all over the world. There is a great necessity of this knowledge. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.